It's quite possible you haven't heard of Cathedral. With the glut of indie titles trying to replicate the Metroidvania formula, it's very easy for titles to fall through the cracks in our perception. When Cathedral launched originally on PC in 2019, I know I certainly missed it. But then, in 2021, the game came out on Switch, and now, just over a year later, this little Metroidvania that can has finally come out on PlayStation 4 and 5. Developed by December-born Interactive, Cathedral is a gorgeous, retro 8-bit Metroidvania that checks all the relevant boxes, adds some new ones of its own, and goes on to completely own the genre, with an expansive, thrilling, and utterly addictive tale about saving the world. Woe betide you if you choose to pass on it now. Your protagonist awakens in the eponymous Cathedral as an amnesiac. With no memory of who you are, or how you got there, you only know you have to find a way out of this twisting labyrinth, looking to do you in with every step. Cue one nearly fatal fall, and you find yourself in the pleasant village of Ivystone, where your true adventure begins. Displaying a stoicism that would make Doomguy sweat, you go about the job of interacting with people to gain new quests and insight about the world around you, before heading back out into the wild, with your final destination, after some serious gallivanting across the breadth of this intriguing new world, being the dreaded Cathedral again. There you will find your answers at last. Now, if you wanted to judge a Metroidvania purely based on the size of its world, Cathedral would have its case made already. Thankfully, the size of Cathedral is just one of its many positive aspects. There is some wonderful 8-bit pixel art on display, fantastic NPC dialogue, puzzles to solve, hair-raising platforming sequences, and wonderful character controls that make the journey all the more amazing. As with all Metroidvanias, you'll need to explore every nook and cranny of Cathedral's world to progress. The game doesn't hold your hand on where to go or what to do, though there is a fortune teller on each town that'll point you in the right direction if you find yourself overwhelmed. As a result, you'll find yourself having to backtrack a lot to reach new areas you couldn't before with each new ability you gain. The game doles them out at a fairly fast rate, just enough to keep you invested, but not enough to make you feel overpowered. Now, the platforming sections alone can be very challenging, with pixel-perfect movement needed when navigating your way between spike traps, moving platforms, and acid pits galore. Where it gets really intense, though, is when you combine the enemies with these killer platforming sections. It's not uncommon to have to time jumps on disappearing platforms, with enemies attacking you at the same time. Thankfully, this is where the stellar movement system comes into play. Gone from Cathedral is the inertia that usually plagues these titles. Your protagonist is wonderfully responsive, with the ability to do a 180-degree turn in midair straight after a jump. It makes climbing platforms directly above one another a breeze, but it really comes into its own when you're fighting at the same time, as you can jump towards where you need to go, turn in midair, and still throw out some attacks at the same time. Success, then, is down to your ability to judge distances and plan your jumps, something you'll get better at the more you play. Just don't let the simplistic look or level design fool you. Cathedral is incredibly challenging in this regard. Now, the towns you visit play a vital role in your journey, and not just for collecting or finishing quests, healing, buying some spanking new armor, but also because there's a bank for you to deposit your hard-fought cash in. This is important because every death will cost you about 10% of your cash. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but in later sections that amount gets compounded as you die, and die again while pushing forward. Cathedral is no Demon Souls, but you will be dying a lot, and if you want to afford anything, including more armor or talismans to help you out, you're going to have to save that cash. Now, Cathedral may be a game that liberally throws money at you, but believe me, it just as easily delights in draining your wallet. Thankfully, when it comes to restarting after a death, there are copious amounts of checkpoints dotted around the world, and there are also teleporters to discover that will take you wherever you want to go. Oh, and should you find one in the dungeon, you can be sure the boss isn't too far off. Talking of dungeons, each of them is themed and full of its own puzzles to take care of. These bosses don't stray too much from genre conventions, and all you need to do is really recognize patterns to defeat them. But while they may start off simple enough, further along the line you'll be engaging in both platforming and puzzle solving at the same time as dealing with them. When it comes to the presentation, Cathedral replicates the 8-bit era fantastically. The animation is gorgeous and full of personality and charm, whether it's the slimes that blow snot bubbles while asleep, or the reapers that almost look ashamed when you block an attack. Cathedral is gorgeous, if minimalist. As an added bonus, Cathedral also packs a rocking soundtrack that feels as if it was lifted directly from an NES game, with a nice variety of tracks, some of which will stick with you long after you've put the game down. To wrap up, if you have any interest in Metroidvanias, or side-scrolling action platformers, then you really need to add Cathedral to your wishlist. With its addictive, one-more-go gameplay, massive world, abundant side quests, and stellar writing, Cathedral is a challenging retro Metroidvania that does the genre proud, and then some.